What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Fools Get Clean 2 podcast, where we show that change is possible, whether you're struggling with addiction, getting incarcerated, or living that street life. So, today we're going to talk about people, places, and things, right? And a little disclaimer, right? I'm speaking from my personal experience. Other people might have other journeys or other walks or other beliefs. So, I'm just speaking from my personal experience, right? So, addiction was probably the one of the hardest things I've ever had to overcome in my life, and it's a daily reprieve. And I'm comfortable where I'm comfortable, and I'm a creature of instant gratification, right? And a creature of habit, So I'm comfortable in the streets, in the neighborhood, around chaos, right? Because that's what I grew up in, and that's where I felt the love and the camaraderie from the homies. You know what I mean? And I felt good being in dysfunctional areas of my city because that's where I used to thrive. You know what I mean? And it's kind of crazy now that I think back, right? That you don't use drugs, you don't have to do crime. You don't do crime, you don't get busted, right? So like it all intertwines together, right? And even if you take drugs out of the equation, right? You don't do crime, you don't get locked up. You know what I'm saying? So for me, it's a no-brainer, right? So we'll start off with the first thing, people, right? So and I know it's hard for a lot of people that grew up in the neighborhood, right? Because your homeboys are your brothers, right? And I'm not saying like you have to cut them all off and never talk to them again, right? But sometimes we have to distance ourselves from people that aren't doing the things that we want to achieve in life. You know what I'm saying? So, like for myself, right? I ended up going to a treatment center, right? And I didn't contact the neighborhood for like 5 or 6 months. You know what I mean? But I almost made a grave mistake by going and trying to show off that I was clean, right? My intentions were good, right? I wanted to go show the homies that I was clean and that hopefully give them hope to do the same thing, right? But the homies were doing the same thing. Everyone was getting high, doing the same thing, getting loaded, doing heroin. You know what I mean? And I put myself in a predicament where I could have lost my clean time and could have threw away everything I worked so hard for, right? And I remember one of the days distinctively, right? Because I went down there like, "Hey, what's up? I'm not using," and they kept offering me, right? And I was like, "Dude, like I'm not using. Like, what do you don't care about that, you know?" And I said, "I'm gone," right? And I had to take the bus back to the treatment center I was at. So I start walking away, and one of my homeboys said, "You'll be back." You know what I mean? And that lit a fire under my ass. You know what I mean? And that kind of built a resentment. You know what I mean? And so I think that helped me stay clean, right? Because I wanted to show them that no matter what, I could stay clean. And so that's two of them. That's people and places, right? So the neighborhood, right? It's comfortable there. It's where you grew up. It's where you have a lot of memories, fond or not, right? But it's a comfortable space for you, and that's what you know. You know what I mean? And for myself, um, no matter, like, I would get out and I would get busted to go to prison, and I had to go to a program because I was homeless, right? So I would go for like 15, maybe 30 days until I was able to get a pass or get a job or get a ride, and I would go to the neighborhood. Then I would chip, do a little shot here, do a little shot there. Then I was full blown strung out, right? But it was always when I decided to go back to the neighborhood, right? Because people were doing the things that I like to do, which was get loaded. You know what I'm saying? So for me, I had to separate myself from the homies, right? And the neighborhood. So I get it, right? Like your homeboys are like your family, right? Several might even be family, like blood, right? But if you really want to change and you want a better life, sometimes we have to do stuff that might not be comfortable. You know what I mean? And what I mean by that is sometimes you have to focus on who's number one. Is that's yourself, right? Especially if you got kids, if you got families, if you have loved ones that you want to be a part of their lives and be there for them, right? Like you have to worry about yourself, right? Because you can only control yourself and your actions. You know what I mean? You can't control what anyone else does, right? So like you got to set that boundary and be like, look, if they start tripping, be like, look, like I'm trying to work on myself so I can be right for my kids or my wife or my mom or my dad. You know what I mean? Because your loved ones are going to be around forever, right? I lost my mom in 2021. suddenly, and I wish I would have been there more often for her, but the choices that I choose to make, um, either had me strung out on the streets or incarcerated for most of the time that she was around. You know what I mean? And that I beat myself every day for that. You know what I mean? And all my grandparents passed away when I was incarcerated. You know what I mean? So that was the real reason why I decided to get clean, right? It wasn't enough to be locked up in prison or in the shoe program or in the hole or being pepper sprayed or being messed up by the cops when I was a kid, and none of that like forced me to get clean, right? It was losing all my loved ones when I was incarcerated, right? Not being able to grieve or be there with them, or just to say my last goodbyes to them. So whatever your motivation is to get clean and to not go to prison or to stop living that street life, you know what I mean? Like run with it. You know what I mean? At the end of the stuff, you got to do it for. At the end of the day, you got to do it for yourself. But whatever your motivation to get started, just run with it. You know what I mean? And there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? So I'm not trying to push 12 steps on you or whatever, right? But like 12 steps work for me, and so I started attending meetings, right, and build a fellowship and a circle, right, that were people who wanted me to do good or see me do good, that didn't want anything in return, right? And they don't have any alternative motives, you know what I mean? Like they legit just want to see me do good and do something good for another person, So the things, man, so the things could be a number of things. It could either be the dope or the actions you're doing, right? So just because you get clean doesn't mean that everything's all cupcakes and rainbows, right? So I remember I was about 2 years clean. I was working in treatment, right? And I took the clients on an outing in my car. And I went to the 76 in Costa Mesa off of Baker and Fairview. I had like 20 bucks to my name until payday, and it was Tuesday, and payday was on Friday, and I was like at a quarter tank, right? No more money. So I was like, man, I'm gonna put 10 bucks in and see what happens. So I'm right there waiting in line, and I see a wallet on the counter, right? And I was like, what the hell? And then the person in front of me didn't take the wallet. So I grabbed the wallet, put it in my pocket, and give the guy the 20 bucks and say, I want 10 on pump two or whatever, right? I went back to the car, right? And in my heart, I knew that I probably shouldn't have done that, right? So I pumped the gas and I go back to the treatment center, and I remember opening the wallet and there was like 120 bucks in there, right? So I got paranoid. I got the wallet, I threw it away. I got the money, put in my gas tank because I thought someone seen me. I was just being paranoid, right? Um, but like I felt like a piece of crap, right? Because that was a piece of crap move. You know what I mean? Like who the fuck with 2 years clean is doing some sicey shit like that, right? I should have probably told the attendant, hey man, somebody left their wallet. You know what I mean? Now somebody has to order their credit cards and their license and all that shit again. That just goes to show, right? That it even though you take the drugs and alcohol away, right? We still have to work on ourselves and work on our character defects. Like I don't claim to be perfect. I'm far from it. I make mistakes on a daily, right? Um, there's issues that I work on daily, and there's stuff that I still struggle with today, right? But my goal each day is to be a better person than the day before, right? And what goes like that, like you can't lose. You know what I mean? And as long as you're trying to be a better person each day and not hurting anyone, then you're doing the right thing. you know so I say all that to say this, right? So try to avoid spots that you're gonna get loaded or do crime or get caught up in, right? Because you're just setting yourself up for failure. You know what I mean? And and for me, I don't know about you, but I like freedom. I like being able to poop with the door closed. I like being able to eat what I want. I like being able to go buy a pack of cigarettes whenever I want. I like to enjoy the company of a female. I like to be able to chill with my little dog. I like to be able to watch whatever I want to watch on TV. And I don't miss being incarcerated at all. Did I have good times when I was incarcerated? Yeah, I did. Did I learn a lot when I was incarcerated? Yeah, I did. Did I learn a lot when I was on the street? Yeah, I did. Did I have fun when I was getting loaded? Hell yeah. There were so many good times when I was loaded, but it was fun until it wasn't. You know what I mean? And until it started like affecting my life with my family and taking my life slowly from keeping me incarcerated, that's when I knew I had to do something different. And like they say, nothing changes and nothing changes, right? Want something different, you got to do different. You know what I mean? And contrary action, do something different than what you're used to, right? So if you're used to paroling and going to the neighborhood or going to the liquor store and getting a 40 or a bottle or going to the connection and getting a bag, you know what I mean? Try going with your family and showing your face. Try taking your kid out for an ice cream or something, or go to church or go to a meeting, you know what I mean? Or be of service, go to a homeless shelter and help pass out some food, you know what I mean? And honestly, like I said, I'm far from perfect, right? But I feel the most reward when I help somebody else out, right? Whether that's a referral to treatment, whether that's helping them get a sponsor, whether that's helping them get on the right track, or whether that's giving them motivation or helping them with my story or helping people on the podcast get there to get the message out. You know what I mean? So that's the reason why I created this platform was I wanted to show that change is possible. You know what I mean? And if a gutter, dope fiend, convict like myself can get clean, anyone can get clean, right? I literally just got my associates in human services from Cypress College, right? And yeah, I'm 47 years old, and I probably took me a long time to get it. You know what I mean? But the moral of that is that anything's possible. If you would have asked me 11 years and 3.5 weeks ago that I would be a human service associate degree, if you would have told me 11 years and 3.5 weeks ago that I would have got my degree in human services, an associate's, I would have been like, you're crazy as fuck. Like, I don't even like school. You know what I mean? And and if people who know me from out there on the streets, whether I was a young knucklehead gangbanging, kicking up dust, or in the halls acting a fool, or in the county trying to be a little torpedo, or in prison putting in work, or being a dope fiend, like, if I got clean, anyone gets clean. You know what I'm saying? And it's how bad do you want it? You know what I mean? Like we all make choices, right? There's consequences for our actions and there's rewards for our choices, right? So it's up to us to which one we want to get. You know what I mean? Like, life happens. Sometimes things don't go our way, right? But as long as you don't pick up and try to be a good person each and every other day, I'm a true believer that everything works out, and it has for me. I've made some mistakes along my recovery journey, right? But I legit have remorse for the things that I've done wrong. You know what I mean? And I try to be a better person. And if I can't make amends to that person, then I try to do a living amends, right? Like, help the next person out. So remember, man, people, places, and things that could take you out. You know what I mean? Can either make you or break you. And like they say, you hang around the barbershop long enough, you're gonna get a haircut. So just be mindful. You know what I mean? That if you want a better life, it's out there, right? It's all about choices. You know what I mean? And I take ownership for all the choices that got me in prison, or strung out, or homeless, or fucked up. I also made the choices to get right and put in the work to get clean and have it 11 years and 3 weeks. You know what I mean? So just want to let you know that change is possible, man, and don't give up. If you're struggling, reach out, DM me on Instagram or TikTok. Fools Get Clean Tools, my handle. And if you need resources to meetings or treatment, I got you, man. Just don't give up. And whether that's getting incarcerated, man, because you're just literally wasting your life in there. You know what I mean? And you should be out here with your family, your loved ones, your kids, your mom, your dad, your sisters, your brothers, your uncles. You know what I mean? And you're never gonna get that time back. You know what I mean? And if for those who can make it out, like, it's a much better life out here, bro. Like, I know it's a struggle to find work and everything, but where there's a will, there's a way. And for those of you struggling with addiction, man, that like I said, nothing changes and nothing changes. If you want something different, you got to do different. You know what I mean? And for me, 12 steps work for me. You know what I mean? And if it doesn't work for you, just find something that works. But give yourself a chance. And with that street life, man, like, Like there's only two real major outcomes that street life's going to take you. It's either incarceration or death, you know. And so to just be cognizant of that, you know what I mean, and just know that if I could change, anyone can change. And remember, redemption, fools get clean too. What's your comeback story?